Welcome to this episode of the Bionicle Inspiration Series. Today, I guess to celebrate the release of the most recent cool Godzilla movie, we're going to be talking about just that, Godzilla and Kaiju MOCs. And, to throw it in, we've got a little bonus challenge today. I have an Uber Eats order that's coming in 20 minutes. Can I finish this recording in time before it arrives? Let's find out. So, before we begin, you might be like, I know what Godzilla is. It's that cool dude from that movie. But what's a kaiju? Well, let us head to Google. Kaiju is a Japanese word meaning a strange creature. In English, it has come to mean monster or giant monster, referring to creatures of a large size seen in movies from Asia. And most sort of your kaiju movies are made in Japan, so if you're looking for some inspiration material, maybe you could watch some Japanese kaiju movies or just looking to that sort of area for some inspiration. But basically big monster things. Typically they mainly seem to look a bit like Godzilla, but as you'll see through this episode, they come in all shapes and sizes. And they're pretty cool. Movies like Pacific Rim and Godzilla, the other one that's coming out right now, have some really, really awesome looking characters and concepts. You got Mothra and Godzilla, of course, all sorts of awesome things, and they're kind of a really good inspiration and stimulus for building some of your own Bionicle MOCs. So definitely something to consider, and definitely something that you could use as inspiration for an up-and-coming MOC. So let's take a look at a bunch of Kaiju and Godzilla-related MOCs that we've got today. Of course, Godzilla is essentially just a Kaiju, but I'm specifically using that word because I specifically have two MOCs that are Godzilla. Or maybe three, I can't remember. But, here we go! So the first MOC we've got today is by IGU and is called Godzilla. You guessed it. So I love the tail on this guy. Just a big mesh of tires. That's awesome. Especially some of the huge tires that he's able to use here. You know, naturally, like we were saying before, Kaiju means big old monsters. And so that naturally lends itself to it being a more larger scale. You got your Titans and stuff. So that's super cool, the fact that you can build to that larger scale and then use larger tire pieces like that to get this awesome looking tail. And essentially too, I don't know about you, but tires are hard to use sometimes depending on what you're building. And so making a big MOC like this and getting rid of all those huge tires you have in your collection that just do nothing and just sit there is a really cool idea. Plus, too, with tires, you're able to create these really smooth, kind of organic flowing designs like this tail here. You know, that thing just flows around beautifully. And it's just a mesh of tires. And probably under that is just sort of a basic structure of CCBS bones or something. It's probably quite simplistic under there. But putting the tires over the top and sort of filling in the gaps with a few other pieces, get a really nice result. And overall, it's a pretty simple design, but looks brilliant. So definitely recommend playing with some tires. We'll talk a bit more about that as the episode continues. But tires, man, they're good. This MOC is a really nice example of parts spamming as well. If you're building a Titan MOC, or if you're just building a larger MOC, or even some of the smaller MOCs too, it's definitely worth considering doing some parts spamming because it's always nice when you can have really consistent textures or sort of shaping or kind of flow across the MOC. And so repeating the exact same part, depending on the way you do it, it's a great way to have all of those things. Everything flows nicely into each other. And we see on this MOC here, he's repeated a whole bunch of those large Onawa chest pieces here. Did I say chest piece? Chest pieces with a T. Those big, cumbersome Onawa G2 parts there. He's put them on the legs, on the thighs, on the waist, on the chest, pretty much everywhere. And interlaced them with a whole bunch of other CCBS pieces throughout. And it looks beautiful. Really, really nice flow and textures and really awesome shaping on the thighs and everything there. It's really, really nice to see. And again, you're making a Titan MOC. Use those big pieces. Just throw them at the MOC, get them out of the way because you're building something that's larger. Definitely is the right time to use those parts. Super, super cool. And it's awesome to see how well all these CCBS pieces flow into a very system-dominated head there. Again, it's just the textures matching up. Those system pieces seem to have a very sort of similar texture to the CCBS parts, and so everything flows nicely. But there's one part of the MOC that sticks out a little bit more, and I love it. We take a look at the neck here. We can see that there's sort of a kind of lattice of what appears to be 1x3 system plates, and then studs, and then that's kind of just repeated up. Almost kind of looks like he's got gills. I don't think those are gills specifically, but kind of has this interesting sort of scale effect there on the side of the neck. I think that's a really beautiful addition there. It's just this little subtle way of kind of just introducing a sort of little accent or something. Kind of breaks up the monotony of this consistent texture here and just adds this nice little something. So it's pretty cool. Guys, sorry to interrupt your current programming, but 8 minutes until my Uber Eats order arrives. I gotta hurry. But we're gonna take it slow. We're not gonna rush things. But the challenge intensifies. Let's see if we can do this. And it's been delayed slightly, so we're good. Anyway, super interesting thing there, adding in that little addition there, especially with the system pieces against the Bionicle like that. Very nice texture play there. It looks really cool. And speaking of adding some system in with the Bionicle, I love this back design here, getting all of these slopes and inverted slopes and things here to create this these really interesting spikes all down the back there. It looks absolutely beautiful. And typically I look at that and I go, you know what, that sort of design, that sort of look or aesthetic, adding in those very large sort of prominent system spikes like that, maybe it wouldn't look so good on a smaller scale MOC. But you know what? Maybe it would. You give it a try, you know? It's a really interesting shape that he's able to achieve there with those specific pieces. But I don't know, it's just so unique and it's so different, but that's kind of what gives this MOC a lot of character too. So by all means, that's something you can easily play with if you are working on a larger scale MOC, but you could easily do the same with a smaller scale MOC too. I just think that's a really interesting thing that he's done there. And it's certainly something that is very much the accent point on this MOC, very much the thing that I think makes it super unique and super out there and different. And I like it a lot. Another thing too, of course, there's all sorts of Godzilla-related memorabilia and toys and things, because it's got a bit of a following, that sort of stuff. And maybe look into some of those toys if you're planning on building your own one. See how the toys articulate, see how things have been done with the toy, and see if maybe you can apply that to a Bionicle. You know, maybe there's a specific way that the knee or the shoulder articulates or something, and you think, oh, actually, I could apply that to Bionicle as well, or because I'm building on that larger scale, or maybe building on the smaller scale too. That's given me some ideas for stability and stuff like that. So it's something to consider. Kind of have a look at some of those things, see what you can learn. Even if you learn nothing, it's worth checking out just in case you do learn something. So yeah, a fantastic, brilliant Godzilla MOC by IGU. Let's move on to another Kaiju MOC by Mitch Henry, and this MOC is called King Komodo. Quick status update on that Uber Eats order. It has not moved. 8 minutes still remaining. But we're competing neck and neck. What's cooler, hot Kaiju MOCs or hot burgers that I'm about to put in my mouth? Stay tuned and find out. Anyway, I like the simplistic build of this. The fact that it's sort of very simplistic CCBS limbs and arms and tail and all sorts of stuff like that is cool. It works. It doesn't need to be overly complicated. This looks like a sort of feral little raptor guy who you wouldn't want to mess with. Especially, I imagine this is its actual size in comparison to a human. It's a little tiny dude and you're like, oh, a little cute guy, and then it eats you. It's great. I love it. But something that I really love is we were talking about tires before. We take a look at the tail here. It's simple CCBS, your typical stuff. But just putting the tires in there just to kind of fill in a little bit of gaps kind of smooths that out a bit, makes it look a bit nicer. And I really like that. The simplicity of just adding a tire to a CCBS part actually does so much for the MOC. I really, really like that. Again, simple little addition, but it does a lot. And then another thing, adding those spikes on the back there, using those flex tubes to kind of get that interesting angle, is another really good idea. You take a look at a lot of the more really skillful Bionicle builders, a lot of them use flex tube quite a lot, because you can get some really interesting angles with it. And so, that little simple addition of adding those tires, adding some flex tube, and seeing what you can put on it kind of thing, actually does quite a lot for the MOC, adds some interesting accent points, adds a lot of character to it and stuff. And so those little subtle additions take this really simple build but elevate it to a cool new level. And another thing that I think that also does that is the addition of this sort of plastic wing piece here, kind of along the shoulders. Kind of looks sort of reptilian in nature, kind of reminds me a bit of some of those lizards like in Jurassic Park that sort of their neck kind of sprawls out a bit there. Of course, it doesn't actually do that, but it kind of looks like it could, and I like that. It's very cool. Something else that's very cool too is, of course, using the typical kaiju head. When we had the Hero Factory Invasion from Below sets, they were kaiju themed, and this was one of the heads for it. And honestly, they're perfect if you're building a kaiju. So if you've got some in your collection, or you don't, go get some and use them, because they're a really helpful piece for this sort of thing. So there you go. 6 minutes until my food arrives, but we're getting there. But we got a few MOCs in this episode. Who will win, me or Craig, who's delivering my food? We'll find out. The next MOC is by Daniel Brickson, and it is called Kaiju. That is the correct pronunciation, 100%. So I really like the concept of the mouth design on this MOC. Really wanted to include this MOC in this episode because of it. Using those, again, Invasion from Below pieces, there was sort of this funky egg thing that some of those little jumper guys emerged from. And these sort of had that sort of flimsy plastic material to them, so you could kind of peel it back as if the egg was hatching. But Daniel here has used it as a sort of mouth design, and I imagine that mouth can actually close as well and open up, so it's this really interesting shape to a mouth design, and then adding all the teeth in there kind of looks a bit like a Venus flytrap or something. It's a really, really unique, really popping, awesome design. I love it. Kind of reminds me a little bit of some of the kaiju that you would see in the movie Pacific Rim. Or Pacific Rim 2, for that matter. And probably Pacific Rim 3. I'm pretty sure that's going to happen. But by all means, take a look at those movies. Go watch those movies. Or just look at some of the concept art or, images of the kaiju in those episodes for some really awesome inspiration. Because there's some brilliant kaiju designs in there. And there's all sorts of stuff that you could take some inspiration from and apply to your own MOCs. So pretty cool. Let's move on to the next MOC, which is by a one Ingen Silbo. And this MOC is called Godzilla. And let me point out, do you want to know the age of this guy? He's 11 years old. Dude, you got some serious skill. Love what you're doing. We shall watch your career with great interest. But again, awesome to see that kaiju head being used here. It is perfect for a Godzilla MOC. I love it. Great to see. I also love all the spikes all down the back here. The inclusion of a little green one and stuff like that. I actually kind of like that. Kind of, you see some, birds or other random creatures out there in the wild, and they've got a little slightly different color variation and stuff like that, or they've got spots or something like that, and just the inclusion of it being a different color, it's kind of natural, kind of looks like something you might see in the real world, and it's a close enough shade to the black that it kind of blends in. It's a little different. I don't know, it's natural, it's kind of cool. I like it. But yeah, the way of kind of connecting all those spikes down the back, it's a little hard to see from the pictures, but I imagine this is sort of just a big mesh of various CCBS pieces, and specifically some of the CCBS torso pieces, and it's just about finding the connection points to attach those spikes on, and just kind of layering them in a certain fashion until it all works out, and you get a really awesome back design like this. But yeah, really cool to see a very awesome looking CCBS heavy MOC. Excellent work, good sir, you've done well. Okay, we've got 2 more MOCs, and I got 3 minutes until he arrives. We're almost at the home stretch. We might just win. Anyway, this is a MOC by Jockson, and is called Mecha Godzilla. The little description here says, 1,000 tons of biomechanical anger and violence. Awesome. Probably one of the smallest kaiju MOCs we've seen, but that doesn't mean it doesn't look awesome. Love the teeth design here, using some of those Ninjago minifigure weapon pieces there. Just the general texture on them does look like teeth and fits perfectly in there for a little nice tooth design like that. Awesome to see. And I love the eyes as well, using some of those, I believe those are Baraki eyes there that he's managed to put through some of those slicer feet to create that sort of 3-eye effect. Really cool idea. And whether you manage to sort of reverse engineer this sort of head design to try and replicate that, or you're just building your own head design for a kaiju, give that a think. Could you give it multiple eyes? Because that's creepy and cool and works for your big scary monster man, so give it a go. Oh, and of course, I forgot to mention this guy's name being Mecha Godzilla. Robot Kaiju, Robot Godzilla, Mecha Godzilla. What a great idea, combining robots and basically dinosaurs and scary monster man. It totally opens up a whole new range of possibilities. What a great idea. So do that. Maybe you're building a kaiju and you think, maybe I could combine kaiju with Darth Vader. Could be cool. Could be awesome. Or octopus kaiju. I don't know, combine it with something completely random or animal related or whatever, and see what sort of stuff you might come up with. Because it's just a big scary monster man. It doesn't specifically need to look like a dinosaur or look like Godzilla or whatever. The possibilities are endless. Also really like the hand design on this guy here, using those sort of octagonal system pieces there, and then putting the Exoforce fingers on like that. It's a sort of more open design, a little bit more animalistic. Looks really nice, looks really cool. Let us move on to the final MOC, which is by Kelvin Low, and is called Mecha Kaiju Experion. So I was just talking about combining random animals or random things with kaiju. Well, here we've combined a snake with a kaiju. What a great idea. So it's kind of like this Medusa-looking thing, except not really a Medusa, but it's a snake with a kaiju body. Awesome. But before we start, it appears I have lost this challenge, and Craig is here with my burger. Give me a hot minute. With the magic of editing, I'll be done right now. And I have, in fact, finished my burger in record time. And you may think, Ben, you've lost this challenge. But not with the burger I just ate. And not with the MOCs that we're just looking at. You're the real winner here today, because you get this fun, epic story, some cool kaiju MOCs. So, let us move on. So the man who made this, Mr. Kelvin Low, he's a very, very talented builder, awesome dude, very nice guy. Be sure to look at his other stuff, because he's made a whole bunch of kaiju. I just picked one of the many. And he's also made a bunch of mechs and like Pacific Rim inspired MOCs and stuff. Lots of cool stuff that he's made. So if you want a little bit more inspiration about some kaiju or some mechs to fight them, take a look at his stuff, because he's a very talented man. But yeah, Snake Kaiju. I love the color scheme on this MOC, the sort of black, purple, and red. Just looks super cool. All the colors kind of complement each other nicely. And then something else that I really like as well is the kaiju head, of course, had this specific bit of purple, and there's a little bit of other purple CCBS thrown around there. But for the most part, the majority of the purple on this mock is actually system pieces. So if that's the case, if you're sitting around and you're like, really want to use, green on this mock, and you're like, oh, I just don't have enough Bionicle parts in green, I guess I can't. Well, take a look at your system stuff. See if you can actually implement that into the mock in some fashion. Or if you're like, oh, but I don't have any system, then, but you're super keen and you still want to build, well then maybe head to the shop, see if there's a set that has a bunch of green in it, or red, or whatever color you're using. Buy that and see if you can put those pieces in the mock. Maybe you're up for an interesting challenge, or you're looking to buy an interesting set, see what you can do with those pieces. Might work, might not. Never know until you try. Also really like the finger design on this mock here, using some more system heavy pieces for it. You typically see your Exoforce fingers for fingers, or Exoforce arms for fingers rather, using those clip pieces and some of those smooth slopes like that. It's a great looking design, I really like it. But yeah, there's a lot to love about this mock, but definitely the coolest thing is the fact that it's a snake kaiju. Combining those two things together, what a solid idea. So yeah, that's it for this Kaiju Godzilla themed episode of the Bionicle Inspiration series. If you want to submit some of your own mocks to the show, well, you can. The way to do so is through the email you're currently seeing on the screen. Send me some pictures, send me some information, all that sort of stuff, and one day it'll be on the show. And if you're like, oh, well, what will the next episode be about? Well, just submit whatever, it doesn't matter, it doesn't have to be themed to the episode, but if you really want to, take a stab at what that next episode will be, check a look, that's the one. Take a look at the community tab on me YouTube page, and then pretty much by the time I posted this episode, I will post a poll of which will say, hey, what episode do you want next? And whichever one gets the most votes, that will be the next episode. That's right. Oh, and also, probably about by this time, actually probably not by this time, but by now, the Bio Cup is almost underway, so be sure to get ready and get set for that. I'll be posting my trailer and a few things, just announcing that I will of course be covering that, because of course I will. It's a fun thing to do, and we got a few extra things up our sleeve with coverage and all that sort of stuff, so stay tuned. More of that will be announced in the hot future, and get ready for BioCup, because it's going to be the best Bionicle competition of the year. Yeah. Anyway, that's it for this episode. Hope you enjoyed. I'ma see you in the next one. Bye for now. Happy building. One bonus thing before I finish, though. Mr. Caleb, who we had in the last episode here, he told me after I posted the episode that I'd done goofed. Turns out his mock was not just one transformation, it had 2 transformations. It was a triple changer. So here's Form 1, Form 2, and Form 3, which I didn't show. So there you go. Now you have seen it all. Apologies for the mistake. Goodbye for real this time.